Travis Wayne Goodsell. In Joseph Smith translation, Revelation chapter 12, verse 1, there's the addition in the first verse. And there appeared a great sign in heaven, in the likeness of things on the earth. Then it goes on to give several signs thereafter. And so I've come to learn over these years that signs in heaven are in the likeness of things on the earth, events, occurrences on earth. That the planets, sun and moon, constellations have meaning to them with individuals and events on earth. But there's also a third category here. We know this because of scripture prophecy. Revelation is a book of Revelation. It's what's called apocalyptic literature. Thus, it's also the book of Apocalypse. And so, apocalyptic literature is talking about events in the future which are going to have actual people portraying the good and the bad roles, the protagonist, the antagonist, as well as the particular events. They will happen in the future. And there will be signs in the heavens. This is what the Joseph Smith translation is telling us. And I can confirm it because I've been paying attention ever since November 4th, 2016, when I learned on Fox 13 News Utah about the solar eclipse that was going to take place on 21st of August 2017. And so this is why I'm trying to warn you, but YouTube has made sure to silence me. They've changed their algorithms yet again to make sure I get silenced. And it's showing. And so I have to repeat this information because nobody's going to the video. There are 3 key Mormon scriptures upon which all scripture needs to be understood under the apocalyptic literature pattern that I told you. Apocalyptic literature is all scripture. There are no literal scriptures, literal history scriptures. It's all apocalyptic literature. And that's why archaeologists can't confirm that they're literal history. And that's why there's so many contradictions if we were to consider them literal history, etc., etc. Even Joseph Smith's history, apocalyptic literature. And so the 3 scriptures are, first, Doctrine and Covenants, section 103, verse 16. Talks about a Mormon who will be like Moses. So then you go to number 2, Deuteronomy, chapter 18, verse 15. That's the prophecy for the Mormon who will be a man like Moses. And then the third, Joseph Smith history, verse 40. That prophet is the Christ of Mormons. A Mormon, mortal man, mortal parents, as the Christ of Mormons. Now there's obviously tons of other scriptures that I've been going over with you, doing very long videos because there's so much information to cover. But those 3 encapsulate interpretation of all scripture as apocalyptic literature, Those three need to be understood. And so then you apply those prophecies of the latter days will have a sign in the heavens, and they will have actual people in actual events according to the prophecies, according to the signs in the heavens. Okay? Simple? Easy breezy, cover girl? You don't need makeup, women. You don't. Yes, we do. Monson said. No, don't listen to him. You're beautiful just the way you are. Don't be fooled. So, with that sidetrack that I lose all my female audience with. Oh yeah, we're cancel culturing you because we want to pay extra money to buy makeup, and we're going to make it natural makeup to look natural. You do understand that women blush when they, and that's why makeup was invented. You do know that? We want to see you blush. You're so cute when you blush. So, let's do a practice. 19 July 1840, Joseph Smith outs Brigham Young and his 12 as going to betray Joseph and murder him and usurp his church and call it the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Because that's not the name of the church. That's not the name of our Christ. The apocalyptic literature of the first vision tells us that's not our Christ. Creeds. You've studied it and you've Google searched the first creed of Christianity, which is the Nicene Creed, right? He turned it into history. Their apocalyptic literature. And so knowing that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is the great and abominable church, as prophesied by the Book of Mormon, as well as other places that I've been going over with you. What then would be the signs in the heavens and the likeness of events on the earth according to the prophecies for the great and abominable church? Well, there's official declaration number 1. Oops, we gotta go to Doctrine and Covenants. Verse 11. And so the wrongly titled President Wilford Woodruff, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints of Brigham Young, was shut down in 1887. And shortly thereafter followed John Taylor's death that summer. And so 3 years later, Wilford Woodruff is now claiming to be the president of a church that no longer exists on the face of the earth? Yeah, I don't think so. This was more like pressure from the United States if he wants to keep the religion going. And it would be more years later when Grover Cleveland, it was in the 1900s, I think, when Grover Cleveland pardoned Mormons for polygamy. But yeah, all during this changeover of the century, there was still polygamy going on, and the Reed Smoot hearings took place, and the government wasn't convinced, and they had reason to not be convinced. So here he says in verse 11, "The Lord will never permit me or any other man who stands as president of this church to lead you astray, as he's doing right at this very moment," claiming he's the president of the church. It is not in the program. It is not the mind of God, in the mind of God. If I were to attempt it, which is what he's doing, the Lord would remove me out of my place. So that's the event on earth. He's giving the scripture prophecy. We're just needing to know what the sign in the heavens would be from God as to God's disapproval. How would he remove a false prophet out of his place? Let alone anyone who attempts to do it. Like Crusader McConkie. Yes, if you've been following my channel, you know exactly the sign in the heavens that I'm referring to. It comes from the Egyptians, as all apocalyptic literature does. The two eyes of Horus. Horus is the hero story, who is to be understood, because of Joseph Smith, as the Mormon, man like Moses, Emmanuel, sun god, one mighty and strong, etc. And the two eyes of Horus are the word PTR, so Peter, and it means seer. And in the stories, during the last day's battle, both his right eye and his left eye are plucked out. So he's blinded. Blinding refers to eclipses, because the right eye is the sun, representing government. So a total solar eclipse is for government. Left eye is the moon for religion. So knowing this as the pattern that a lunar eclipse would be during the time of a president of the church who leads Mormons astray, death, remove him out of his place, death. I then went and did the chart. Ta-da! Every single one. And not only that, but they murdered Joseph Smith, wrongly accused, under a lunar eclipse as well. And thus, Deuteronomy chapter 19, about false accusers, false witnesses, and the punishment for them, was immediately enacted, which is what Wilford Woodruff is likewise saying. And Joseph Smith translation, chapter 12, verse 1. And so that's confirmed. 100% confirmation. So Nelson, he's not anybody new. He claims succession all the way back to Brigham. If you saw his solemn assembly, or the clip that I show in my videos from that solemn assembly, where Irene is talking about it. From the days when John Taylor was the successor of Brigham Young. Notice he didn't talk about Brigham Young and his succession, because it wasn't authorized. July 19th, 1840. They're the great and abominable church. And so we're right smack in the middle of the latter days. We have 2 more years left until it's over, until we have to get to Zion. But we cannot have Zion, we cannot have a place of safety, refuge, and peace without an Exodus. And we can't have an Exodus without the fall of the great and abominable church. And what is the sign in the heavens for the fall? Well, there's a specific one that I've shown you for Saturday morning, and we're right smack in the middle of another tetrad. Remember the first tetrad prior to the forerunner of the latter days? 2014, 2015. Yeah, I just brought it up again with my one-on-one with Richard G. Scott, who was one of 3, specifically according to Scripture prophecy, that 3 were to die. So that Nelson would be put in the pole position, and that the signs in the heavens, the events on earth, and the Scriptures all harmonize. We're right smack in the middle of a tetrad. And guess what? The Scripture is the Exodus. Because we're going to have Passover tomorrow evening. So, take what I've given you, the 3 Scriptures, and the 3 things: signs in the heavens, Scripture prophecies, likeness of events on earth. Because they've all been happening all this week. And so it's going to be highly improbable that God's going to just stop it and not go through with it. You know what? I've changed my mind. After watching the movie by Demi Moore, 7 Seals, I've decided that a pregnant woman who's never read the Bible in her life can read it for the first time and stop Armageddon. It's a great movie, but hilarious that there are actually people who are so extreme in their religious views that they don't stop to think, wait a minute. She's never read the Scriptures in her life, and she stops Armageddon? And I'm not sure about the guff, because born and raised Mormon, we don't talk about a guff. Except, I do recall having a discussion an actual guff is trivial, worthless, or insolent talk or ideas. They must have made that word up. Or it's a foreign word, and Hall of Souls. Okay. Is the concept of the guff biblical? The Talmud asserts that the guff is a place where souls are kept. So yeah, it's a Hebrew word, which is why there's guff with 1 F for tree of souls, and that's Jewish mythology of the Garden of Eden, tree of souls. So it does look like it's part of the tree of life for Jewish mysticism, which, I remember as a teenager having this discussion, because what happens at the end of the world? You know, Satan is unleashed, tries to do battle to take over the throne, world's destroyed. So if there are any spirits left who don't have bodies, well, they're out of luck, they're stranded. Or, what happens? You have women still on Earth. What do you do? Oh no! Do men no longer conceive in women? How does that work? And so, I'm going to download this, because this has to do with Jewish mysticism. Because it's all over the Book of Mormon. The 116 pages replaced. So, we'll put this. Okay, well. So, glad I looked that up. And the final day, final evening. And so, I'm very confident despite, if you've watched my videos for the past year, you can see my frustration that I do a sign in the heaven video and I can't quite establish an event on earth for it. And sometimes I'll see a scripture prophecy, because the fall of the great and abominable church, we know it's going to happen, but trying to figure out when has always been a conflict, and I didn't think I was even going to be alive to this point. It is a miracle. And yet here I am for Passover, when the scriptures and the signs in the heavens all converge. So that's how it's done. And that's how we were supposed to be studying our scriptures. And unfortunately, there was a great and abominable church that was causing a stumbling block for each and every one of us. And that ex-Mormons continue with that stumbling block, as they still think Joseph Smith is responsible for polygamy. And using a rock and a hat to write the Book of Mormon. Again, Joseph Smith Sr., guys. Jewish mysticism. York writes with the Knights Templar, the bloodline of the Christ. The Smiths established themselves as the bloodline for the Christ. Brigham Young knew this. He changed it to him and his 12. And so Richard G. Scott, as I mentioned in the video, was the first apostle not a part of the bloodline, not even married into it like Bruce R. McConkie was. They understood that concept. They just didn't want to tell any Mormon. So, yeah, we'll close with more confirmation for you in case you're having a faith crisis right now. Just remember to breathe. In, out, in, out. And it's Moses chapter 7, 53. And the Lord said, "Blessed is he." So you're going to need to know the difference between a he and a she, and what he's have and she's don't have, and what she's have and he's don't have, through whose seed, remember, he's have and she's don't have, but she's have and he's don't have, something like that, through whose seed Messiah shall come. Mortal man, mortal parents. Not Jesus. Not Trinity Jesus, not Hercules or Perseus Jesus. Those were apocalyptic literature. And there it is, Joseph Smith translation. And it would be in Genesis, because this is Enoch talking. Extra stuff for the passage of Enoch, which gets a little thing in Genesis. So, there you go. Tomorrow, I hope you guys are prepared, because something's going to happen. There's signs in the heavens, there's scriptural prophecies. Things have been happening. Why would it stop now? So, are you the Mormons who mock, or are you the Mormons who believe and are being prepared?